Hello and welcome to mini lecture 10. This is the final video on the scientific procedure. My name is Martin Hughes, and in this final video we're hopefully going to give you the final touches to your scientific report, and by the end of this that'll be us finished the process. So thank you so much for paying attention and going through these videos. It's been quite a lot of work, and my students who've went through these videos have produced some phenomenal reports already, so I hope you've achieved something similar. If not, it's helped you guide your own report or your own data collection. Please let me know how it went. This has been an experiment for me, I guess, to see how it's went down, but so far so good. And yeah, hopefully this will be the icing on the cake to give you some additional information about the scientific report. So we know we're in the final stages, we're in the conclusion. And in the last two videos, we introduced the 5 main features of a scientific report: our abstract, our introduction, material methods, results, and our discussion. So the last thing we really need to talk about is the reference list. We'll talk about some other things too, but the reference list is extremely important. We've not talked about it at all. So that's what we'll do in the majority of this video. So we'll discuss how to reference within your report and how to produce a reference list. And we'll also go over other important details, such as the title of your report, an appendix potentially, and using scientific terms. And I use the terms scientific report, paper, manuscript interchangeably again, but I'm referring to the document that we've been producing. So I use these terms interchangeably just to reiterate that point. So why should we reference? Well, there's a number of important reasons we need to reference in our scientific report. Number one, first and foremost, it proves that you have researched the topic thoroughly, and you've demonstrated a level of expertise. So you're very familiar with the information, you're providing lots of references as evidence that you've done your homework. Basically, you've done your research. You understand this subject extremely well based on these references that you have read. So that's the most important one. It proves that you understand the material and you understand what's going on in that realm. So we're talking about avian behaviour at this moment in time. So if you've read a lot of papers on that, I'm going to presume you have extensively researched this and there can kind of trust what you're saying. Number two, if something is not common knowledge, you must provide a source for this claim. So if you say something that seems a little bit out there and then you don't reference it, I don't really know if you've made that up off the top of your head or if you've found it in a genuine source. So we really need to back up any statements we make that may seem like other people wouldn't know that's common knowledge. So it's common knowledge that all birds have feathers and they lay eggs, but maybe it's not all common knowledge that one particular bird, like the cuckoo, is a brood parasite. So it lays its egg in other birds' nests, and when that cuckoo chick hatches, it kills all the other birds. Okay, so not a very nice example, but it's an example nonetheless that I need to reference that. Okay, how do I know that information? Did I just make that cuckoo thing up? I hope you can go and Google this, and hopefully it doesn't give you nightmares. But yeah, we need to assume that the reader doesn't know much. So we provide the reference to prove what we're saying is true. It kind of backs us up. And as a rule of thumb, you cannot over-reference, but you can definitely under-reference. So the more references, the better. And finally, number 3, references can help demonstrate current beliefs. So say you're referencing papers from 2016 to 2018. So we're in 2018 just now, versus what we thought about a topic in the 70s perhaps. We can see how the beliefs have changed in light of new evidence. So it's important that we use modern references as well as other references from the past. But if all of your references come from 1960, then things have probably moved on substantially from then. So we want to see some modern references, and of course put in older references that are pertinent to your study. Not dismissing those, but if all of your references come from the 60s or 70s or even before that, then you might have missed quite a lot of information that could be relevant to your paper. So references can help demonstrate current beliefs and also contextualize how we're approaching a subject. If we put in some older references, what we knew then and what we know now. So hopefully you're getting the idea that references are very, very important. That's why we have them in a scientific paper. So how do we reference then? So we have a thing called an in-text reference, and unsurprisingly they occur in text within your report, and they can feature in any part. However, the majority will probably feature in your intro when you're introducing your key concepts and facts to the readers, and in your discussion when you're trying to tie your results into the big picture. That's not to say that you won't use references in your methods, particularly if you followed somebody else's methods from another study. You would definitely reference them, or you used a statistical analysis that was used in another study that you think, yep, this is appropriate, our data is very similar. You may want to put a reference in there to justify why you conducted that analysis. So I'm not dismissing that again either, but the majority will probably occur within your introduction and your discussion. So what is an in-text reference? What does it look like? So it may look slightly different depending on what journal you're reading. Some of my students, I've gave the benefit of the doubt where they've used a different style to the way I would use initially, but that's okay. But this is the rule of thumb. This is the way I would approach it, and I would encourage people, most people, or everyone to begin with, to use the in-text references in the following way. And again, like I was saying about the cuckoo thing, we're talking about making the following statements. If I made the following statement, for example, that ferox trout in Scotland require large habitats, a prey source and deep water, I'd need to provide a reference for that. And luckily for me, I wrote that paper, which is great. So for example, if I was to make that statement and I was the sole author of that paper, then the statement would read, ferox trout in Scotland require large habitats, a prey source and deep water. Hughes, 2018. So you have the surname and the year of the publication. Now, if one of my friends helped me write this, or a colleague helped me write this, where there was two authors, we would have the same statement and say it was Joe Smith, then it'd be Hughes and Smith, 2018. Okay, so we'd have the two surnames of the authors of the paper that you're referencing and the year it was published. And this is typically what most in-text references look like. There is a third example. For more than two authors, we're going to use this Latin phrase et al, which means and others. Okay, it's Latin for and others. So why do we do that? Well, say there was more. There was Hughes, Smith and Brown at the top here. So there's three people wrote this article. We'd only reference or use the surname of the first author, the senior author, the name that comes first when you look at the author list of your paper. And then we'd put et al. 2018. Okay, so we don't put everything there. We don't put everyone else's surname. So why did we do that? Well, there's actually no limit for the number of authors that could be on a paper, particularly if you read a paper that was contributed by lots of other people across the world. So that's not uncommon, where we have, for example, we talked about apex predators. There's a great paper I read, but it had about 30 authors contributed to this single paper. It was quite a big read, and 30 authors is obviously a substantial amount of people. So if I was reading that sentence again, and we had to use everyone's surname, ferox trout in Scotland require large habitats, a prey source in deep water, and we had about 40 surnames. It'd be Hughes, Smith, Brown, Bloggs, Fraser, McDonald, Jones, McIntosh, Anderson, Adams, Barry, Dodd, blah, 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 2018. It might be about 4 pages later before I actually read the next sentence. So not ideal. We don't want to spend half our time reading surnames. So we shorten that to et al. That indicates to me that there's more than two authors, but I don't need to sit and read all their surnames. It really breaks up the flow of a paper if you're reading out a phone book of surnames. So we don't do that. We use et al, which is Latin for and others. So if you have any publications that you're going to reference that have more than 2 authors, then you know to use et al. And if you see in the top there, we usually italicize it or put it in italics up here. So you see we can put it in italics, et al. Just a little formatting thing. So I hope that makes sense with in-text references. So with every in-text reference, we then have to have a full text reference in our reference list at the end. So that's what we're going to talk about now. A reference list may look slightly different depending on the journal. Most cases they use APA style or Harvard style. So they're the 2 most common styles, but this may be different again. So don't worry too much about that. And if we're referencing a scientific paper, we can get the full text reference from Google Scholar. Saves us a lot of time instead of us typing out everybody's name, the title of the paper, the year of publication, the journal, the page number. We have to have all that information there, but we can actually do that quite easily through Google Scholar. So I'll have a look at that now. So if I open up Google Scholar, if you just Google Scholar, it comes up. And because we love apex predators so much in lakes, we're going to look at lake bathymetry. Bathymetry just means the bottom of the lake, so the shape of the lake essentially. Apex lacustrine is a fancy word for lakes, predators. Okay, so enough words. Okay, so it, funny enough, puts up my paper, which is really handy, but puts up a lot of other papers that could be related to that subject or which are related to that subject. So we want to get our full text reference. How do we do that? So very simply, if we've read this paper, I'm assuming you guys are all going to rush out to read this one. Thank you very much. And we want to get the reference for it. Google Scholar has done the job for us amazingly. So you see these little quotation marks? If I click on the quotation mark, not only does it give me the full text reference, it gives me it in a number of common styles: MLA, APA, Chicago, Harvard, and Vancouver. So say we're looking at the APA style, we can click on it, highlights it all for us, but we can highlight it, we can copy, open up a Word document, paste. There we go. In-text reference. Doesn't look great at the moment. We still have some work to do. Let's just make that a little bit bigger. And Times New Roman, because I'm not very creative. Okay, that looks a bit better. So we have the surname, Hughes, Martin, that's me. My colleague, Jennifer Dodd, Peter Maitland, Colin Adams. So we have the surname and the initials, which is great. We have the year of publication, lake bathymetry and species occurrence predicted, blah, blah, blah. That's the title, which is good. Journal of Fish Biology, where was it published? What issue was it? Number 88, 4th of the year, and the page number. Okay, cool. So if I highlight that again, we want it in a certain format. So this is a formatting issue, but not without the realms of our possibility. So if we right click on it and go to paragraph, if we're using Word, indentation, special, currently it is at none. We want to have hanging. I click on hanging, I press OK, and there we go. That looks pretty nice. Okay, so this is going to be in our reference list. So if I go back to Google Scholar and say that we looked at another few papers and say we'd read a few, okay, this one looks good. Okay, yep, this one looks good. And we'd read this paper by Benson and Magnuson. And we quote to cite the quotation marks. It opens this up again. APA, right click, copy, back to my Word document, Control, paste. Okay, I need to format it again. So you can maybe do this all in one go. It might be easier, so you just paste them all in, and then you can change the font and the size. That will save you a bit of time. What size was that? 18. Okay, so I need to format it again. Paragraph, hanging line. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I don't like the size of that cursor. Okay, this looks okay. So I might populate this reference list with all the in-text references. They all have to have this full text reference. One last thing we need to do, once you have all your references, you're going to have to go back and put them in alphabetical order. So B obviously comes before H, and we have it there. So you're going to have this nice list. We may want to justify them as well. Your OCD. That looks pretty nice, and again it's following the same structure. So it will save you all that time typing out. That could take you a long time. We can use Google Scholar to quote. Perhaps you didn't read a scientific journal, you have a mixture, and you have a web page. What we may want to do then is just copy and paste the website address in your reference list, and you want to keep that separate from your journals here. So you maybe call these journal references, and you can maybe say website references, just so that doesn't mess up your flow of your journal references, and you may have a couple of websites. Okay, so for every in-text reference you have to have this full text reference, and I hope that's clear how you can get the reference fairly quickly. And if it doesn't exist on Google Scholar, then yeah, you'll have to write it out yourself, but you'll need to follow the same format. Whatever your teacher or your lecturer asks, that type of format. The university that you're attending may require a certain type of format. Okay, referencing. Pretty happy with that. And if we're quoting a website, like I say, we can't provide too much information if possible, blah, blah, blah. So include the web link is what I'm trying to say there. When it comes to references, a reference list, or where to find your sources, this goes back to what we talked about in the really early videos about making a judgment call and critical thinking skills to evaluate the value and caliber of your source. If the source looks unreliable, then don't use it, because you might be, I hate to use the word fake news, but you might be perpetuating something that may be untrue. So unreliable sources may look reliable, but if they've not been peer reviewed, or they're on websites that don't appear legitimate, then it could just be somebody talking and they don't have any evidence to back it up. And you've went to all this trouble to analyze your data. You've got evidence to back up your reports. You don't want to ruin that by putting somebody's nonsense in there as well. So this is quite a difficult thing to do, is to find reliable sources, even more so in recent years as there's more and more information being uploaded to the internet all the time. And it's up to you to make a judgment call on whether or not you think that source is reliable or not. There's no real place that I can direct you to other than Google Scholar and things like that, but it's up to you. You have to trust your ability to distinguish good from bad, and that's what makes you a good scientist at the end of the day as well. Last week I alluded to Australian Geographic putting this as a front cover. This is essentially our hypotheses, which is really cool. So should we feed the birds? I'd argue that you read this. You could use this material to strengthen your paper. If you're watching this in the future, then you may want to go to Australian Geographic website and look at an archive. But this is something that I would definitely trust as a good source. So that may be a good first port of call. Okay, reference list, really important. I'm glad we've got that out of the way. But there are other things that we need to discuss that would strengthen your paper considerably. Losing the ability to speak. Sorry about that. One thing you may want to do is include your title, which you will want to do. And your title should plainly state what your paper is about. And it may be as simple as, for our example, differences in feeding times of wild Australian birds. As you can probably tell, I'm not the most creative guy in the world, so you may want to come up with something a little bit catchier than that, but that serves a purpose. I'm happy with that. So I wouldn't waste 3 days coming up with this fantastic title. As long as I read your title and get a fair idea about what it is you have done or did, I'll be fairly happy. So don't waste too much time, but it should be informative. The other thing that we need to mention that will come after everything, it will be on the last part of your report, is your appendix. You may or may not have an appendix, but it's a really useful place to add additional information. For example, the raw data from your Excel spreadsheet, you may want to copy and paste that into your appendix, and that will allow your tutor, your lecturer, or your class teacher to look at your data as well. So we don't want to post the raw data into our results. The results section is reserved for our tables and graphs that tell us information pertinent to our hypotheses. The appendix can be an area where we can maybe add supplementary material that helps tell the story, sort of thing. And again, if you go into my website, inspiringecology.com, and you look at the writing guide, there's a little bit, you can see the subheadings there where the appendix would fit into your scientific report. So yeah, it's important. If you can add your raw data, then please do. It would be great to see your information and how you came up with your results. Okay. The last thing I think that I'm going to mention, or the second last thing, is the scientific names for animals. I had some extremely interesting descriptions of birds, which is fair enough. I'm not expecting you all to be ornithologists and know all the bird species. The common name for the bird pictured here is, of course, the crested pigeon. We had some interesting names like the mohawk pigeon or the rock and roll pigeon, which is fair enough. I understand. I like the creativity. Again, I'm just jealous that I'm not a very creative person. However, that can pose problems later on if we're writing a report and everyone's using different names. So in science, what we have is scientific name, also known as the Latin name, for all animals, every animal. Homo sapien is the Latin name for us. And so every species has a Latin name. And that means that anyone from around the world will always refer to that species in its Latin name. And it doesn't matter then if the common name is not quite correct, because we know that the scientific Latin name is universal. Everybody in the world will use the Latin name. So I picked a particularly hard one with the crested pigeon. I cannot pronounce it, so apologies. If anyone does know how to pronounce it, please leave a comment. But if you Google Australian crested pigeon, we find out its scientific name is Ocephalus lophotes. Okay, so probably not the intended pronunciation, but we'll go with that. I won't repeat it again. So how would that look in our report? Well, we may say for the first time when we mention the crested pigeon, for example, we may say something along the lines of, in our study, we observed the crested pigeon, Ocephalus lophotes, and we put it in italics like that. I promised I wouldn't say it again. Apologies for that. That's pretty bad. So anytime after we refer to that name, the crested pigeon, we just need to shorten it. We can shorten it to O lophotes, and we keep it in italics. So the first time we mention it, we use both names, and you can see here that the first name always has a capital, and the capital remains even when we drop the rest of the word. So it's O lophotes, and that word again. You can read. You can all read. So that's how I would record this in my scientific report, but it's really important because it allows us to understand what species you're talking about. And you can quite simply Google Australian crested pigeon, and that name pops up on various websites, so you know that that's the real scientific name. So if you really want to strengthen your paper, I would strongly recommend you insert the scientific name. Even if you just insert it once, the full name once, the first time you mention that species, and then if you want to refer to that species using the common name for the remainder of your report, that's fair enough. But if you can put it in at least once, that if you get into that habit, then you'll see that the majority of papers you're reading will refer to the animal species with their Latin names. So it's a good habit to get into, and it also allows you then to look up things. Okay, I don't really understand, and you see the Latin name and you Google it and you're like, okay, right, they're talking about a crested pigeon. So it's it might seem like a small detail, but I think it could really strengthen your report. So I'd recommend you do that and take the time to insert them into your report. Okay, last bits of advice before I leave you. When we're writing a scientific report, like I say, I am not very good at writing English essays where you have to use lots of fancy language and explain things that are maybe quite subjective. That is not my strong point. So that may be yours, which is fantastic. Again, I'm jealous. But my strong point is getting to the point and talking logically and coherently in a structured way. So that benefits me as a scientist, and that's what we'd expect to find in your scientific report. So please avoid using informal language or speaking in the first person. You may use "in this study we investigated." However, you would not say "I conducted this study, it was very time consuming." That may be true, but we don't want to see that in your report, unfortunately. Okay, that's not very informative. It's not telling me anything about the bird species in Australia. So please refrain from using informal language as much as you may like to. And once you finish your scientific report, leave it alone for a day, or if you don't have enough time, even an hour. Walk away from it for an hour, do something else, go outside, look at the glass and just be like, oh, I'm fed up looking at birds. But go outside and do something to take your mind off of it, and then come back and reread the whole thing. Check grammar, sentence structure, missed commas. You'll see throughout my PowerPoints that I don't take my own advice. But if somebody reads your paper and they're editing it and they're giving you marks, and you've done all the hard work and things like grammar and sentence structure let you down, then that's going to be a bitter pill to swallow. So we want to make sure that the things that you are in control of before you submit them are airtight. Okay, you may not be 100% confident with everything you've written, or maybe I could have added some more information in my results section, blah blah blah. That might be fair enough, but you shouldn't hand in a piece of work that you haven't read at least once over yourself, because you're kind of demonstrating to whoever's marking it that you've kind of rushed through it, and that may not be the case. You may have spent a lot of time on it and just thought, oh, I need it out of my life and just submit, but that's a bad habit so don't do that. Please reread it. If you can and you have the option, send it to somebody else. I'll talk about that in a little second. But redrafting is a huge part of the scientific report writing, and it's extremely rare that you're going to produce a report that's perfect first time round. Okay, this is a process that I'm still learning. I'm still getting better at it, I hope, but it's still something that I'm improving upon all the time. You're never complete when it comes to this. You can always do a little bit better. So you're not going to produce your best work first time round, and that's fine. Allow yourself that space and that time to reevaluate and re-edit and redraft, and make it the best piece of work that you can, and polish it as much as possible. And like I say, if you have somebody that like a colleague or a classmate or a teacher that's willing to look over it, have somebody edit it. That's the best advice I can give you. Somebody with a fresh pair of eyes that hasn't looked at it before can really see issues that maybe you have just became blind to because you're so close to the paper. In a science setting, you'll probably have a supervisor or somebody that is responsible for you and to you, and they're your best port of call to get some really good edits back from them. So I'd recommend sharing that about if you don't mind other people looking at your work, and don't be too precious over it. If they come back with edits, which they will do, accept the edits, and if it strengthens your paper, then everyone's a winner. And 9 times out of 10, your draft will come back with red pen or tracked changes depending on how you submitted it, and this is a good thing before you submit. So your draft is going to come back with edits, like I say, and this is good. It's going to strengthen your paper. And this is just stuff that I've said. Having a fresh pair of eyes will pick up things that you may have missed. And this is really important because we can't be too precious about our report, our data. We can be proud of it, and we've did a good job. However, if somebody comes back with a bunch of comments to help improve the paper, don't take it personally. Okay, if you're training to become a scientist, this is a continual process, and you're going to receive feedback from anonymous reviewers when you submit it to journals, and this can be a very time-consuming and sometimes frustrating process, but it's very necessary, extremely necessary, because it ensures the integrity of your data and the caliber of your work. Ultimately, it's going to improve your work. So if you are training to be a scientist, then you need to grow a little bit of a thick skin and think, okay, they're giving me this advice because it's going to help my paper. They're not personally attacking me. Okay, so you have to lose the ego a little bit and suck it up and be like, okay, right, I can take that on the chin. I'll see if I can incorporate these changes and make the paper better. Okay, so you may find that with your teachers and your classmates as well. Please don't take it personally. This is a continuing process. Okay, that's enough of the sermon. We have completed our reference list, which completes our scientific report. So hopefully that's been useful. Some extra tips in there above and beyond the reference list. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, follow, share with anyone you think these videos may be useful to. Please follow us on Twitter at inspiring_eco, or myself on Twitter at Dr Martin Hughes. And stay tuned, we're going to be doing a lot more online lectures on different topics. I'm hopefully going to be putting some lectures on about statistical analysis, so I know that's of interest to a lot of people. So yeah, please subscribe and let us know how you found this series. Thank you very much.